Here at the Agricultural and Environmental Services Labs, we provide a lot of testing, but one of the foundations of what we do is testing soils for nutrient concentrations.
Daniel Jackson, research coordinator at the University of Georgia's Ag Environmental Services Lab, says the soil looks very different depending on which part of the state it's from.
And you can see the diversity of soils across the state. You can see the coastal plains and the sandier, darker soils down here, the more clayey soils up in the Piedmont.
Every crop requires a specific amount of potassium, phosphorus, and other nutrients. By testing the soil, you're able to get precise recommendations to make your soil even better.
This is just soil samples that we have received today. Each of these sets holds roughly about 36 samples.
Stephen Floyd, laboratory manager for the Soil, Plant, and Water Lab at UGA, says before they leave the lab for the day, they load up the dryer with soil samples.
And over here, I'm just going to cut it on. And right now we're sitting at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. This guy in probably about 30-45 minutes is going to warm up and be right at the 110.
In the morning, they remove the samples from the dryer.
Oh yeah, these sets are good and dry.
Then they match up the samples with the paperwork on file.
Okay, everything matches up really well.
In the lab, they do everything alphabetically and by color.
For routine soil samples, like these are right here, they're just going to get malic, which is the minerals, and it's going to get pH, which is just going to give you your pH of your soil. All we're going to do is call them a routine, which we use black Sharpie.
For special soil tests, they use red, and for research purposes, they use green. From here, the samples go into the grinding room. Not every sample needs to be ground, but every sample does need to be sifted down, so everything is homogenized.
So all I'm doing, again, shaking out as much as I can, and then I'm going to dump out. So what you're going to get is initially that soil sample looked a little bit like this, all those chunks, and now it's perfectly homogenized. This we can work with.
Some samples require the grinder.
Cut this guy on, put it through the grinder. Once we're done in this room, we're actually going to take it to our extraction room. Now this is where a lot of the hard work goes into it.
They start with malic, or testing the mineral content of the soil.
And I like to use one of these spoons right here just to make sure we get a level sample. And we're just going to dump it into that cell right there. Now this is where time becomes a factor. This is malic solution right here. The malic solution is essentially very distilled, very diluted, acid. We use about 20 liters of DI water, and then we put about 160 mils of hydrochloric and about 25 mils of sulfuric acid, and that's what makes malic 1 solution. We also shake that up, and we also get a good pH value. I'm just adding 20 mils of solution into each vessel.
Then the samples go to the shaker.
Now what this shaker is going to do is actually agitate all the soil samples and just really mix everything up very well. And we're only going to do this for 5 minutes.
Once the samples come out of the shaker, they're poured into a filter.
So all this is doing is actually stripping any and all the soil out. So what we want is just the liquid.
Once they get the extracts, they bring them into this room.
Here we load them onto our ICP auto sampler. As the solution goes into the machine, it hits the flame, it actually creates ions, which each element, potassium, calcium, whatever, has a specific color of light that it produces. When it hits the flame, it produces a specific color of light. The machine is going to detect that light and determine the overall amount of that specific element.
As the machine analyzes the samples, all the data gets recorded into the computer and uploaded into their system to determine a fertilizer recommendation.
We hold ourselves to very high standards, and we do our due diligence as far as turning out the best possible result to the client, because we know these are valuable results.
By testing your soil, you're able to actually get precise recommendations about what is there and what you need to apply in order to maximize your yield and have the best farm operation.